My Summary of Learning by Laura Smith. I learned this semester that students can sometimes perform a task and seemingly possess a skill, but that doesn't necessarily mean he understands what he's doing or why. We must look for evidence of student understanding in order to be sure we had an effective lesson. I learned that all people are different, and just because a student gets a poor report card, it doesn't mean that he isn't smart. Each student is smart in his or her own way. I learned the different types of intelligences and how I want to help my students discover their abilities and prepare my lessons to accommodate all their different strengths. I learned about Marzano's strategies and how much they can improve our students' achievement, not only on standardized tests, but also on everyday assignments. This is something I've already begun to incorporate into my lesson planning. I was shocked by how much could be gained by having students identify similarities and differences, but it's something I plan to have my students do in their organizers for several of our lessons. I learned that there's a difference between collaborative learning and cooperative learning. When we put students into groups, we have to make sure each group member has a specific job and performs that job in cooperation with the other members. No longer is it good enough to group students together and allow the responsible one to do all the work and the others to just get the grade. Students do have to collaborate, but it is in the context of cooperation, because there must be true cooperation in order for true learning to occur. I learned about so much lesson planning. We cannot merely throw a dart at a board of skills in the morning and just do our best to teach what it lands on. I learned how to put together a well-constructed plan beginning at the point where I want to end up in order to keep every step of the lesson moving toward the end goal. This is probably the skill I value most, and I plan to keep working on for the rest of my career because I know there will always be more to learn in order to teach better. I learned the difference between formative and summative assessments and how important it is not only to understand the differences, but to use them in the proper way. Formative assessments are those that occur before or during learning in order to improve the learning process. Summative assessments are those that are given after the learning process has occurred in order to assess what the student gained. Students need meaningful feedback on their formative assessments in order to correct their misconceptions. If we don't provide the proper feedback, the summative assessment won't even be fair. I learned that teacher-made tests are very important since teachers know better than anyone what their students have been taught and what best ways to find out how much they've retained. I learned that teacher-made tests can be much more than just a worksheet made by a teacher and given as a test. Teacher-made tests can be in many different formats and can be differentiated for all the different learning styles in the class. I've become much less afraid of making my own tests because of what I've learned in this class. This class has been incredibly beneficial to me as an upcoming first-year teacher. I've learned so much about how I want my class to run and how much planning it takes for that to happen. The concept of beginning from the end has changed the way I look at the Common Core standards, which I've also learned so much more about. They are no longer scary to me, but rather it's somewhat exciting to have such a clear idea of what my students need to know in order to be prepared for the next grade.